as we talk about the business of hospice, let's talk about net patient revenue and what that means. This is the fundamental financial unit of measure that in the multi-view world, and that folks that are doing the model use. Again, NPR equals net patient revenue, and we will operate with percentages of net patient revenue. Here's the definition of net patient revenue. It is all our earned revenue from the provision of services to patients receiving Medicare, Medicaid, commercial insurance. Okay? It is net of bad debt and contractual allowances. Okay? It does not include any community support, and it does not include pass-throughs. What's a pass-through? A pass-through is any place where the hospice is paid, or basically has a relationship, or we're paid on the behalf of another entity, okay, due to a governmental regulation. Let's illustrate. We're paid to manage the care experience. Correct. And there's certain vendors that we use that the payment has to come through us because we're accountable for that experience. And there's four primary ways that we have pass-throughs. The first is nursing home, room and board. The next is contracted inpatient or contracted respite. Last is consulting physician services. Each of those are pass-throughs. Again, we're charged with providing the care experience or being responsible for that. And then we, in turn, we get paid, and then we reimburse these other providers according to the terms of our contract or agreement with them. Okay? So that's the definition of net patient revenue. This is very important because once we commonize it, this allows us to grade all hospices equally, basically apples to apples, oranges to oranges, and all that. Some people don't like benchmarking, like, oh, you're really not doing that. That's all weenieism. I mean, if you have a fundamental grasp of numbers and statistics and how they work, you just got to know, okay, someone's not comfortable with the results normally. Okay. The cool thing about this is that it's easy to calculate, and it replaces what measure? Patient day. Patient day is something, we're paid on a patient day basis. It's basically something that came out of the hospital type environments. But patient days are complicated, and they don't work that well for a lot of areas of hospice management. They work pretty well with patient-related costs like medications, DME, therapies, all that. Patient days works pretty well, but then it blows apart any place where there's a wage component. And it's just a little more complicated, where this is really simple and elegant, operating on percentages of net patient revenue. And let's illustrate this. Let's say for a team, medication costs for a month are $25,000. Okay, for medications, it's basic element of hospice. And if we know what the net patient revenue is for that team, all we have to do is divide 25,000 divided by 300,000, or the net patient revenue, and it gives us a result of 8.3% of net patient revenue. And you can do this for any cost in the ledger system. Okay. And some of you are going, yeah, that's pretty easy and all that. Okay, I'm going to find out right now how professional you are. What is the median in this country right now? What is the median? What is the average? Maybe you know it on a patient day basis. What is it? I'm giving you a little bit of time. Say it. If you don't know what this fundamental measurement is of medications, and you're a clinical leader or a CEO or a CFO, what claim do you really have of being a, quote, professional in this hospice world? And this is where benchmarking comes in, where you gain that perspective. If you were a professional, You should be able to go into any hospice, whether it's in San Francisco or Corn County, Iowa, or New York or Florida, whatever, and you know what to ask for. You know basically how it's computed. You know the formula behind it. And you can render a judgment right then and there. Is that good, bad, whatever, for all the line items in the ledger. That's the professional. The hospice world is chuck-a-bang full of people masquerading as professionals. A professional gets our operations of what we're doing and can balance the financial aspects, can do both, not just knows one. Oh, she's a great nurse and she got promoted up, but nobody took her out back and showed her, you know, the business, how to be a manager. You can't manage professionally without this. I mean, how much resources are you going to put in that? How much does your CFO know? But, I mean, who's the real CFO? It's the CEO. That's who controls the purse strings. So again, and how do you become professional? Benchmarking. For this a little bit of, this is the relief of this. If this made you uncomfortable, it's just if you start using your benchmarking reports to educate your staff, running it wide open, no filters, you want to see yourself compared against not-for-profits, small hospices all over the country, and you always know where you are in relation to that, and you can see the movements, and then you design your model of where you want to be, if you want to overspend here or less or whatever, but you have that professional perspective. And you can learn this in just a few hours of study, where you can do that. You can walk in. I know how this was calculated. Boom. That's what we're talking about here, with the business of hospice. You learn how to manage, and you learn the business of hospice. You can write your ticket any place in this hospice world, because it's just starving for talent. Okay. So it's really management. That's the real problem in hospice land. This is why people are not doing well financially, because they don't know how to manage. They don't know how to manage well. Okay? So teach people how to manage. And that means what? The allocation of resources to maximize benefit or return on investment. Okay. Why use these percentages of net patient revenue? Why use this rather than patient days? Okay, three main reasons. First is this professionalism from comparison. These percentages are comparable with other hospice programs. They help us gain perspective. Again, this allows us to compare a hospice in California, in Iowa, in New York, or whatever. You can't compare patient day amounts, except for one area, patient-related. All the rest of them are blown out. Why? Because in California, they're getting $275, let's say in San Francisco, from Medicare. That's a routine rate. In Corn County, Iowa, they're getting $35 a day. Okay? In California, they're paying out $60 an hour for a nurse. In Iowa, maybe it's 25 or 28 or whatever. Okay, so patient day basis, they're way off. Okay, but on a percentage basis, they're comparable. So it helps us become a professional and graduate from the ranks of the amateur to the ranks of a hospice professional manager. Next, these percentages help create the model, meaning that it is these percentages are much better suited for the creation of a scalable system, which means that if we create our model, our standards, and if we had 100 patients now and we grow to 200 patients, we increase by 100%. We can keep the same standards. We don't have to come up with another new budget, because we're not doing budgets anymore. We're doing the model. If we go to 1,000 patients, we can use the same standards. Nothing changes. If a hospice comes in and knocks us back, we still use the same standards. It's scalable. We view all costs as variable. And because some accounting types are going, well, Andrew, what about fixed and variable costs? Okay, if we go to, back in our training, in cost accounting 2, we learned that all costs become variable within the relevant range. That means like a range of 10 years, because you can do something about, quote, fixed costs. If you have buildings, you can sell them, in like half a decade. You can repurpose things. You can do all kinds of things. You have leases. You can renegotiate. Certainly a salary can change, so they all become variable. If we were at the MBI Executive Conference Center, there's windows all over, right? Because it's on the top of a mountain. I can point out to one of those mountains and say, see that mountain? Someday that mountain won't be there. It will be a desert. It may be an ocean. It may be plains. It may be another mountain, but it will not be what it is today. All things change. All costs are variable in the relevant range. Again, if you get hung up on that, go to your cost accounting. Cost 2. Okay, the third point. These percentages are just flat easy to understand. Okay, how many can remember what your budget is for this year? What was it last year? What was it the year before? A lot of us, it just didn't spring up. Whereas if I say, hey, nursing is going to be 14% in our model. Okay, social work is going to be 4%. CNAs are going to be 7%. Medications are going to be 4% or whatever. Okay? They're just, people get it instantly. Oh, and also, it's just easy to teach. These NPR percentages help us organize in our minds because we can see this pie of 100%. And as a CEO or any manager, you say, well, this is the pie and this is what I have. And if I put more in the volunteer area, what's going to be my return? If I go completely wild, instead of spending 1% of that patient revenue, let's make it 2% of that patient revenue. And we increase that volunteer percentage from 5% to 15%. That's a good allocation of resources. But it just helps us. So, we have direct labor, let's say, at 38%, a typical hospice at 41%, so we're just asking for a little decrease there. Patient-related, we're asking for 17%, a typical hospice is at about 18.5%. Indirect costs, a typical hospice is around 35%. We're just asking for a little less, 31%. And you can see, and then you build in your profit that you get if census is up or down, because all managers have to learn how to keep their costs within the model with fluctuations, patient volume of 15% up or down. And of course, provide a written plan regarding that. But it just helps us conceptualize.